Welcome to the Depth Dive. We're here to really get into some fascinating ideas, things that hopefully help you see the world, well, maybe a bit differently, with a bit more clarity, perhaps. Today, we are diving deep, really deep, into something fundamental. It's a question that kind of sits underneath everything else. How do we actually know what's real? And maybe more importantly, why does our perspective, our way of looking at things, matter so much in figuring that out? Our source material for this exploration is a really insightful essay by Heinz called The Arbitrariness of Objectivism. Now, if you haven't come across Heinz's work before, you're definitely in for something interesting. He's described as a lifelong learner, someone really passionate about reflection, about exploring ideas. And through his writing, he shares these really sharp insights on, well, a whole range of things. Cybernetics, systems thinking, lean, even statistics. They all kind of connect, you see. He's also a very active member of cybernetic. That's a community, a really vibrant one, apparently, offering resources, books, podcasts, forums, all for people wanting to delve into these sorts of topics. So Heinz's essay, it's important to say up front, it isn't trying to argue that there's no reality out there. Not at all. It's more about understanding how we engage with that reality, how we build our understanding of it, and how that building process itself, shapes what we end up calling true or objective. So yeah, let's get into it. Should be a fascinating discussion. Okay, so let's unpack this. The place to start, absolutely central to Heinz's argument, is this concept called cybernetic constructivism. At its core, what it does is challenge a very common, often kind of unconscious assumption we have, which is the idea that we, as people, as observers, have this direct line, this unfiltered access to objective reality.
Right? Like we're just passive receivers of what's out there.
Exactly. And cybernetic constructivism says, well, maybe not. Maybe it's not that simple. But it's crucial, and Heinz stresses this, to be clear about what it doesn't say. It's not denying that there's an external world. There's stuff out there, independent of us, existing whether we look or not.
Absolutely. The universe doesn't vanish when we close our eyes. That's not the point.
The really interesting bit, is that our interaction with that world, it's never direct. It's never raw.
It's always mediated, always filtered.
Filtered through our biology, our senses, our brain, our language, our culture, all of it. We don't get the world as it is. We get the world as we are able to construct it.
And what's truly fascinating here, and this is a core point Heinz makes, is why we construct. It's because the external world is just overwhelmingly complex, fundamentally, inherently more complex than our capacity to grasp it all at once. Think about it.
Like trying to process every single piece of data on the internet simultaneously.
Exactly. Or his analogy, trying to hold the entire ocean in your hand. It's just impossible. Our brains, our senses, amazing as they are, they have limits. They evolved for survival, for viability, you know, not for omniscience, not for perfect, complete knowledge of everything.
Makes sense. We need to simplify to function.
Precisely. So as a fundamental part of staying viable, of just being able to operate day to day, we don't just receive reality passively. We actively construct a version of it. And that version, it's unique to our own interpretative framework. It's built through our interactions, our experiences.
So like the ocean analogy, we can't grasp the whole thing.
Right. You take a scoop, maybe a few scoops from different places, and that collection of samples, that becomes your working model, your map.
A usable map, not the territory itself.
Exactly. The mind creates a map that helps us navigate, make predictions, make sense of things. It's not a perfect photo, but it's functional. It has to be. This construction, this map making, it isn't just like a neat trick. It's necessary. It allows us to function, to avoid being totally paralyzed by the sheer complexity, the noise, the overwhelming amount of information out there.
We simplify, we categorize, we find patterns.
Yes, all part of constructing a workable reality. We make meaning out of what would otherwise just be chaos.
And Heinz makes another really important point here, this construction. It's not just happening inside each of our heads in isolation.
No, absolutely not. That's critical. While it starts with individual perception, it fundamentally takes place in a social realm. We're constantly interacting, communicating.
And that social element is where things get interesting in terms of refinement.
Yes, that's where error corrections happen, adjustments, refinements to our individual maps. They happen because the whole process is embedded in social interaction.
Okay, so maybe another analogy could help here. The essay mentions one.
The puzzle analogy.
Yeah. Imagine a group of friends building a huge, complex puzzle, but none of you has seen the final picture, only maybe small parts.
So initially, everyone has their own idea, right?
Yeah.
This piece goes here, that piece looks like this, based on their limited view.
But then you start talking, sharing ideas. Hey, I think this blue bit connects to your edge piece. No, wait, look at the shape.
And through that conversation, that dialogue, maybe even some debate.
You start correcting each other's interpretations. Oh, you're right, that doesn't fit there. Ah, I see how those connect now.
Exactly. You collectively identify the mistakes, the misfits, and you move towards a shared understanding, a shared construction of the puzzle image.
Even though it's still a construction, not the real picture directly.
Precisely. But it becomes a viably shared construction through that social process. That back and forth is essential for stabilizing our understanding into something we can agree on and work with.
This naturally leads us to Heinz von Foerster, a huge figure in cybernetics. Harish calls him the Socrates of cybernetics, which is quite a statement.
It is, but fitting. Von Foerster offered these incredibly profound imperatives, ways to think about acting in a world we understand as constructed.
Let's get into those. They seem pretty key to this whole worldview.
Definitely. The first one is the ethical imperative. It's deceptively simple. Act so as to increase the number of choices.
Increase the number of choices.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is that ethical in this context?
Well, if you accept that we construct our reality, that it's not fixed or predetermined, then this becomes a powerful guide. It means our responsibility ethically is to shape our understanding, our systems, our actions in ways that open up possibilities, rather than shutting them down, rather than insisting on one single right way, which inevitably limits choices for ourselves and others.
So it's about fostering openness, adaptability.
Exactly. Resisting dogma. Resisting anything that prematurely closes off avenues for exploration or new solutions. It's about building maps with more paths, not fewer. More freedom to navigate.
That makes sense. Okay, and the second imperative.
The aesthetical imperative. This one is, if you desire to see, learn how to act.
If you desire to see, learn how to act. Okay, that's less immediately obvious, perhaps. What's the connection between seeing and acting?
It challenges the idea of passive observation. It says our understanding, our ability to see the world clearly, isn't just about taking information in. It's actively shaped by what we do, by our interactions, our experiments, our engagement with the world.
So knowledge isn't just received, it's produced through action.
Precisely. You can't truly understand swimming just by reading about it. You have to get in the water, move your limbs, act. That action changes your perception, your understanding. It's through acting in the world that we learn to see the world more deeply.
Like scientific experiments, you act on the world to see how it responds.
Exactly. Our actions are the lens through which we gain insight. They don't just happen in reality. They help shape the reality we perceive.
And Harish connects these imperatives directly back to pluralism, right?
Yes, he argues this whole cybernetic constructivist view, especially with von Foerster's imperatives, strongly supports, maybe even necessitates pluralism.
And pluralism being the idea that there isn't just one single correct version of reality.
Essentially, yes. The idea that there can be multiple, valid, functional, coherent ways of understanding and interacting with the world.
Because,
as we said, the external world is far more complex than our ability to capture it completely. Our cognitive tools are limited.
So to stay viable, to cope, we build these particular versions, these maps. We don't access the whole territory directly.
Correct. And different observers, or the same observer in different contexts or with different purposes, might construct different yet equally viable maps.
Which brings us back to the map analogy. A subway map is valid for navigating the subway. A topographical map is valid for hiking. Neither is the one true map of the city or the mountain.
Exactly. They are tools, constructions useful for specific purposes. Pluralism acknowledges and even celebrates this diversity of useful maps, rather than insisting one must be the single absolute truth. It sees our maps as tools for navigation, not perfect photographs. That's the key insight.
Okay, that makes sense. But this idea, pluralism, acknowledging multiple realities, it often runs into criticism, doesn't it? People get uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Harish points this out directly. A major criticism is that this whole view gets misrepresented. Flattened, really.
How so?
It gets painted as either extreme relativism, the idea that anything goes, all views are equally good, even contradictory ones, or as solipsism, the idea that only your own mind is real.
So critics say, if you accept multiple perspectives, you must accept any perspective, no matter how flawed. Or, if reality is constructed, does anything really exist outside my head?
Precisely. They create this caricature, suggesting it leads to chaos or total isolation, where no shared understanding is possible. Harish is clear. That's a misreading. a significant one.
So we need to be really precise with these terms. Let's tackle relativism first. What's the difference between pluralism and that extreme relativism?
Okay, precision is key here. Some forms of relativism, the really extreme ones, do claim all views are equally valid, full stop, even if they completely contradict each other.
And the problem there is?
Well, think about it logically. If all views are equally valid, consider the statement, only my view is valid. An extreme relativist would have to say, yep, that's valid too. It creates a paradox.
It means you have no way to compare or critique anything.
Exactly. There's no mechanism for evaluation. If a deeply flawed, incoherent argument is just as valid as a well-reasoned, evidence-based one, then validity becomes meaningless. It flattens everything.
Like saying burnt toast is as delicious as a gourmet meal. Delicious loses its meaning.
Perfect analogy. Pluralism doesn't do that. It's about viable, functional constructions, not just any random assertion. There are still criteria for evaluation within pluralism, like coherence, utility, ethical implications.
Okay, so pluralism isn't anything goes. What about the other mischaracterization, solipsism?
Solipsism is even more extreme. It's the philosophical position that only one's own mind is sure to exist. It questions or outright denies any shared external reality, or at least our ability to know it.
It basically cuts you off from everyone and everything else.
Pretty much. It discards the whole idea of intersubjectivity, that shared space where we can actually communicate and build common ground.
And Harish says?
He's very direct. No systems thinker, and certainly no pluralist, takes this position seriously. It's just not compatible with a framework like cybernetics or systems thinking, which is all about interactions, relationships, and communication within a shared environment.
So it's a philosophical dead end, really, for practical purposes.
You could say that. It doesn't help us understand how we navigate the world with others. So understanding what pluralism isn't, it's not relativism, solipsism is crucial for grasping what it actually is.
Right, clearing away the confusion. So let's define pluralism's actual position clearly. Harish puts it very precisely.
Yes. Pluralism is neither relativism nor solipsism. That's the first stake in the ground.
It does not claim all views are valid. That counters the relativism charge directly. Rather, it asserts that no view is valid by default. Okay, that's the core. Nothing gets a free pass.
Exactly. No view is automatically true just because it exists, or because it's traditional, or because someone powerful says it is. It has to earn its keep, so to speak.
And how does it do that? This is where Harish says it gets really interesting.
Yes, because pluralism insists on a process. Perspectives must be made visible. Their assumptions, their origins brought into the open.
They need to be situated in context. Where did this view come from? What purpose does it serve? Under what conditions is it viable?
And critically, they must be evaluated through dialogue, through shared inquiry, critique, communication. It's an active, rigorous process.
And it resists automatic authority, even its own.
That's a subtle but vital point. Pluralism doesn't set itself up as the ultimate authority either. It's a framework for inquiry, including inquiry into itself. It maintains that critical stance universally.
The jury analogy seems apt here again. Every viewpoint gets heard, contextualized, debated, and judged on merits, not just asserted.
Precisely. It's about transparency and rigorous contextual evaluation, not blind acceptance or arbitrary dismissal.
Okay, so that's pluralism. Now, how does this contrast with objectivism as Harish describes it?
Well, objectivism, at least in the form Harish is critiquing, tends to operate differently. It typically selects one single claim, one framework, one map.
And declares that one to be the truth.
Exactly. It declares that only this claim is valid and implicitly or explicitly designates all others as error, noise, or simply wrong.
But the crucial question pluralism asks is, on what basis?
Yes. On what grounds is this specific view elevated above all others? What's the justification for its privileged status?
And Harris suggests that often that justification isn't provided, or it's hidden.
Often, yeah. The grounding, the reasons for choosing that one view might be internal to that specific viewpoint, or historical or cultural. It's situated.
But it's presented as if it's neutral, universal, self-evident.
Precisely. As if it's just the way things are, accessible to anyone rational. And this hiding of its own situatedness, its own origins, is what leads Harish to the core idea. The potential arbitrariness of objectivist claims.
It appears arbitrary because the reasons for its selection aren't open to examination.
Exactly. If the assumptions remain hidden, if there's no transparent justification offered for why this view gets the crown, then from the outside it can look arbitrary, like a preference masquerading as a necessity.
And Harish has that powerful quote.
What presents itself as necessity may simply be preference in disguise. From a pluralist standpoint, this represents concealment rather than clarity.
Concealment rather than clarity. That's quite pointed. It's like claiming one type of architecture is the only correct way, without admitting you were only trained in that one tradition.
Right. Or an economic theory presented as universal law, without acknowledging the specific historical context and power dynamics that allowed it to become dominant. Pluralism wants to bring those hidden contexts and assumptions into the light for discussion. Objectivism, in this mode, keeps them hidden.
This leads directly into the paradox Harris points out, which is really the crux of the essay's title, isn't it?
It really is. It's a fascinating turn. Paradoxically, this kind of objectivism, the kind that declares one truth and hides its own basis, starts to look strangely similar to the very relativism it claims to fight against.
How does that work? They seem like opposites.
Let's break it down carefully. Extreme relativism, remember, says all claims are equally valid. So claim A is valid, claim B is valid, even only claim A is valid. It dissolves distinctions. This form of objectivism says only claim A is valid. But crucially, it often offers no open, agreed-upon method to question why. Why A? Why not B? The justification is internal or hidden.
So what's the common outcome?
Both approaches, through totally different routes, end up shutting down meaningful evaluation and critical dialogue. Relativism makes critique impossible because everything is equally valid anyway. Objectivism makes critique unnecessary from its own perspective because the truth, claim A, has already been decided, and alternatives are simply errors.
Both effectively close the door on further inquiry, just in different ways.
Exactly. Relativism dissolves differences. Objectivism excludes difference from the start.
And this dynamic, this exclusion, is what Harris argues risks leading objectivism towards not pure solipsism, but
functional solipsism. Yes, this is a mandatory deep dive moment. It's really critical to his argument.
Okay, functional solipsism. Let's unpack that. It's not saying the objectivist literally believes only their mind exists.
No, not in the strict philosophical sense. Functional solipsism describes what happens in practice when a worldview, especially an objectivist one, refuses to acknowledge its own perspective. When it denies its own situatedness, its own filters, its own mapness.
And at the same time, denies legitimacy to all other perspectives.
Yes. When it does both those things, denies its own lens and denies others' lenses, it effectively stops seeing the external world in its richness and complexity.
It only sees itself.
It sees only itself, reflected back. It sees confirmation of its own views everywhere and dismisses contradictory evidence as noise or error caused by others' flawed perspectives. It becomes functionally blind to anything outside its own framework.
The analogy used was the person wearing glasses that only let blue light through.
Right. They genuinely believe the world is blue. They don't recognize the glasses are the filter creating that perception. They've stopped seeing the multicolored world and only see their own blue-filtered reality.
So functional solipsism is like being trapped in an echo chamber of your own making.
An echo chamber, or a hall of mirrors. It's the erasure of other ways of seeing, based on the illusion that your specific way of seeing is reality itself, not just a way of engaging with it.
And this can happen at individual levels, organizational levels.
Absolutely. An individual convinced of their absolute rightness, unable to learn from mistakes. A company ignoring market shifts because they only trust internal data. A political group dismissing all opposing views as inherently corrupt or stupid. It's a dangerous kind of blindness.
Wow. Okay, so the implications. What's the real danger here, according to Harris?
The danger of this unexamined objectivism lies in its method. It selects one view, calls it truth with a capital T, and then treats everything else as less than, as error, confusion, maybe even deception.
It takes its own specific map.
Its personal, historical, situated map, and presents it as the universal, eternal, self-evident territory.
And the punchline is?
This approach is not more objective than pluralism. It is simply better concealed. The bias, the perspective is still there. It's just hidden, pretending to be neutrality.
Which brings us to another crucial deep dive. Ontology versus epistemology. How does that distinction play into this?
Right. This is fundamental to understanding why concealed objectivism can be problematic. Frameworks that prioritize ontology, the study of what is, what's real over epistemology, the study of how we know what's real can easily fall into this trap.
So focusing on what is true before asking, how do we even know if something is true?
Exactly. Ontology asks, what is? Epistemology asks, how do we know? If you jump straight to declaring this is the reality ontology without carefully examining your methods, assumptions, and limitations in knowing epistemology.
You bypass the very process that might show you your view is just one perspective.
Precisely. You skip the step of epistemic humility, the self-reflection about your own knowing process. This ontological presumption, claiming to know what is without scrutinizing how you know, becomes really problematic when it denies its own epistemological underpinnings.
It's like claiming knowledge without showing your work.
Or like claiming to know the contents of a locked box without ever examining the lock, the key, or even acknowledging that it is a box you're looking at, not the contents directly. You ignore the process, the medium, the constraints of your knowing.
And different fields might lean one way or the other.
Sure. Pure mathematics might feel more ontological sometimes, dealing with abstract truths. Social sciences often lean heavily epistemological, studying how realities are constructed. Pluralism insists we can't ignore the epistemology, the how we know, if we want to avoid dogmatism.
Okay, so let's loop back. Pluralism doesn't collapse into solipsism.
Absolutely not. It stays engaged with a shared world, acknowledging mediation.
But objectivism, when it denies its own perspective, risks falling into functional solipsism.
That's the paradox Harris highlights. By refusing to acknowledge its own interpretive framework, its own glasses, it doesn't make the framework disappear. It just makes it invisible, unexaminable.
And an unexamined framework can become a prison.
It can. It operates unchecked, reinforcing itself, potentially blinding the observer to anything that doesn't fit.
So, to be clear, pluralism isn't about being wishy-washy or indecisive.
Not at all. Harris frames it as a disciplined humility. It's a refusal to jump to certainty too soon, to oversimplify complexity.
It does have standards.
Yes, but it demands those standards be made visible, questioned, held accountable to their context. It's arguably more rigorous than accepting a hidden, unexamined standard presented as objective truth.
And the payoff for this more rigorous, humble approach?
Well, practically, it opens up space. Space for dialogue, for considering more choices, for finding new possibilities that might be invisible from a single fixed viewpoint.
It keeps us asking questions.
Constantly. It reminds us that what we don't question, what we take for granted, becomes invisible. Not because it's fundamentally true, but because it's buried in our assumptions.
That seems incredibly relevant today with so much polarization.
Immensely relevant. In a world often shouting competing certainties, pluralism offers, as Harris suggests, something rare. The courage to stay open, the courage to ask how we know what we claim to know, and the courage to keep talking, especially with those whose perspectives clash with our own. It's about learning, not just winning arguments.
Okay, so wrapping this up, let's crystallize the main takeaway from Harris's perspective. Pluralism isn't anything goes. There's still evaluation, critique, the need for viability. But crucially,
no single view gets to be immune from questioning, no exceptions.
And this stems from that cybernetic constructivist understanding. Our realities, our maps are constructed. They arise from our limits, biological, cognitive, social.
And they work, they're viable, not because they're perfect copies of an inaccessible true reality, but because they enable us to function, to navigate the complexity we actually face. They're good enough tools for the job. Which leads beautifully into that quote from Heinz von Foerster I wanted to share. It just nails it, I think. Von Foerster said, "Objectivity is the delusion that observations could be made without an observer."
Wow. Objectivity is the delusion that observations could be made without an observer.
Just sit with that for a second. Think about what it means for you listening right now. Every observation you make, every piece of news you read, every opinion you form, you were in there. Your perspective, your history, your context, it's unavoidable.
So the goal isn't to try and achieve some impossible observer-free state.
No, that's impossible. The real task, the more honest and productive path, is to acknowledge the observer's role, to become aware of our own lenses, our own part in constructing what we see.
And doing that, acknowledging our role, doesn't lead to chaos or isolation.
Quite the opposite. It leads potentially to a more rigorous understanding. An understanding of how knowledge actually emerges through that dynamic interaction between observer and observed, always within specific contexts and constraints.
So, the final thought to leave with everyone listening, maybe it's a question. As you go through your day, maybe ask yourself, what perspectives am I not seeing right now? What assumptions am I making? How can I practice a little more of that epistemic humility, that questioning of how I know what I think I know?
The lifelong practice, really, a continuous deep dive.
It really is. What a rich discussion, unpacking Harish's The Arbitrariness of Objectivism. We've touched on cybernetic constructivism, pluralism versus its mischaracterizations, von Foerster's imperatives, that critical idea of functional solipsism, and the ontology-epistemology link. If this sparked your curiosity, and I really hope it did, we absolutely recommend checking out Harish's blog for more of his insights. You can find it at harishnotebook.wordpress.com. That's harishnotebook.wordpress.com. And, as mentioned earlier, if cybernetics and systems thinking are areas you want to explore further, definitely look into the Cybersyn community. It sounds like a great place for connection and learning. And that's Cybersyn, spelled Cybersyn. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some valuable tools for thought. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.